All right, everyone. A big welcome to the hottest energy conversation of the summer. I'm Alex Zafran, Director of Business Development at Logical Buildings. Big thank you to our guests for joining. We've really got an excellent session today. And as anyone who's been to a Broadway show knows, a lot of the real magic happens backstage. So first of all, I want to thank Zora Roy, Director of Marketing for Logical Buildings, and Alex Siminoff, Director of Marketing for Parity. The show would not go on without them. So summertime brings a lot of specific things to mind. You've got holiday travel, kids out of school. It's actually the only time when the New York City subway turns into the world's largest free public sauna. It's very interesting. You got to bring your own towels though. Um, but there's something else that should come to mind when you think about summer, and that's dollar signs. A lot of dollar signs. People don't realize that there's really no better time than the summer to create significant energy savings and, as we'll hear today, to put revenue in your pocket. So by the end of this webinar, you'll have an understanding of the process that AvalonBay Communities has really mastered and learn what it takes to get the same benefits for your buildings. This is the hottest webinar out there, guys, and that's because we have the coolest cast of characters. And I'm pleased to allow our guests to introduce themselves. You've heard from me. James, please.
Yep. Thanks, Alex. James Hanna here, and I run the U.S. business for Parity.
Hey, thanks for having me, Alex. Alex Heckman, Director of Engineering for AvalonBay. I cover our Northeast and Florida markets.
And hello, I'm Ryan Younis, Senior Manager of Sustainability and Decarbonization at AvalonBay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so without taking care of, before we dive in, just a few housekeeping items before we start. Yes, all the slides will be distributed after the webinar. Yes, the recording will be distributed after the webinar. After our presentation, after the conclusion of our conversation, the doors are wide open for questions. Don't be bashful. We know you've got lots of them, so be ready in the chat. And for everyone who posts questions during our presentation, we see you, we hear you, we love you. If we don't have an immediate response, it is not because we're ignoring you. We're going to address all of your questions. At the end of the conversation, you'll see my email on the screen and you'll be able to track me down. And you have my word that the questions will get answered. So who are we and why are we talking to you about this? From our perspective, from the logical building side, we're an energy technology company that trains buildings to make better energy decisions and help them get rewarded for it. It's difficult for owner operators and property managers to understand what's driving energy usage and why their utility costs are rising. Because after all, you can't fix what you can't measure. And that's why our platform, SmartKit AI, creates visibility into energy data for thousands of buildings across the US. And through our partnership with Con Edison and other utilities, as well as providing NYSERDA award-winning training curriculums for building staff, SmartKit is the #1 tool to cut energy spend, improve equipment performance, create revenue, and lower carbon emissions. James, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Just to give everyone a little bit of background on Parity. So we are an HVAC optimization as a service company that's focused on urban apartment buildings and hotels. And yeah, part of the reason we wanted to do this presentation in conjunction with Logical Buildings, because what we do really complements the services that they provide. We're really focused on automating the way that the central heating, cooling, and ventilation equipment operates in these buildings, operating it through the lens of day-to-day efficiency, but also operating it through the lens of generating maximum demand response revenue, helping with peak demand management, and just providing extra value by squeezing extra performance out of these systems that you already have in your building. So to get into, setting the stage for the conversation we're going to have today, instead of doing a big long presentation on what it is that we did and all the details of how we got to the results, we really want to focus on the results to set the stage for the conversation that we're going to have with Ryan and Alex and AvalonBay. And I think increasingly when you're thinking about sustainability initiatives, when you're thinking about energy management initiatives, focusing on the results and having the ability to track the results in a really clear way is increasingly important, right? I think in the macro environment that we're in, with people focusing on what are the tangible, measurable impacts net operating income, impact to, the value of properties. That's where the intersection with energy efficiency and energy management, I think, is getting back to in some ways. And that's really what we wanted to focus on here. So, to talk, through what we're looking at, there's 3 buildings that we've been deployed in, both Logical Buildings and Parity with AvalonBay in Manhattan. All these buildings are actually not too far away from each other in Midtown West in Manhattan. And the results of this integrated approach, really speak for themselves. So in 1 year, looking at calendar year 2024, we generated 241,000, a little bit more than that, in utility cost savings. That's measured, that's verified savings that are all going to AvalonBay's bottom line by optimizing, getting better performance out of these central heating, cooling, and ventilation systems. And these buildings, the focus is really on the heating side and the ventilation side. And the way that these savings are achieved is not by doing drastic mega changes to the way that this equipment is controlled. It's making small micro adjustments to find the optimized set of set points, control adjustments in real time. And really where you're doing a lot of your heavy lifting is not necessarily on the hottest or coldest days of the year when it comes to heating. It's helping to find, the right balance, the optimal set of set points in the shoulder seasons, or you see big swings in temperature. Maybe it's 25 degrees one day, 50 degrees the next. That represents a huge change in demand in the building. And with this, technology forward, automation forward approach, you can squeeze a lot of performance out of those systems by making sure that you're eliminating the energy waste that would otherwise exist. There's a lot of carbon savings associated with this sort of an approach that can be measured as well. I think, most people know by now you have Local Law 97 in New York, but other building performance standards, different flavors of Local Law 97, Berto in DC, or Berto in Boston, I should say, BEPS down in DC, a lot of other markets where, CO2 emissions are important for dollars and cents reasons, not just for environmental reasons. And you can see how that is categorized, when it comes to Local Law 97. Fine avoidance in 2030, right? Which is when, not just these buildings, but a lot of buildings in New York City start to look at real fines and, are going to be looking for real cost-effective ways to reduce their exposure. So I'll hand it back over to Alex to talk a bit about the demand side of things.
Thank you, James. Perfect. So these last 2 columns are pretty unique. Like most things in life, it's really all about timing. So this first column, or I should say this 4th column, demand response revenue. What is it? When New York City's grid is under stress on those sweltering summer days, think 95 degrees, humid, tough to go outside, the grid has 2 choices to prevent blackouts. They have to buy more power from power plants, which is often extra pricey and carbon intensive, or they can pay energy consumers to cut back on it. And this latter option is known as nationally demand response, where utilities compensate users for targeted energy reductions at very specific times. So here, AvalonBay Communities, as well as their residents actually, independently, took actions during specific time windows without impacting safety or comfort or building operations and got rewarded for it monetarily. And the final column, 2024 ICAP savings. What this means is every summer for 1 single hour, Con Ed takes a snapshot of energy usage across their entire service territory when peak demand is at its highest. So this is across all of their operational capacity. The amount of energy that a building uses in this 1 hour window impacts their bills for the next calendar year. So similarly with demand response, by making conscious decisions to curtail energy usage in this specific time, AvalonBay Communities generated significant savings in a very concentrated window that applies to their 2025 bills. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the table is set. It's time to dig into our main course. We are honored to have Alex and Ryan here today and kick off our conversation. So, Alex, I'm going to start with you. By the way, as an aside, your name means defender of mankind, so maybe we should call you defender of buildings as well.
Maybe.
It's no, you've got a a lot of work and a lot of good responsibility. So anyways, let's set the scene, Alex, for everyone. It's probably not every day that you wake up and you think about energy management. So tell us a little bit about the Midtown neighborhood specifically and what was happening at this time that kind of got you thinking about ways to cut costs at the buildings.
Yeah, well, I mean, at AvalonBay, we are fortunate enough to have an engineering department. It's a little bit different than a lot of other real estate owners here. And so many of us do wake up thinking about energy.
Hmm.
When you really look at operations and the costs, your top line items are payroll and utilities, right? So as an engineer, I think utilities, energy, water are really crucial to the value I can provide to AvalonBay as a whole. For these communities, they are particularly high EUI communities for us, and also expected to see some heavy local law 97 fines. So in addition to meeting our own sustainability goals, really the driver here was, or the rush really was local law 97 come 2030.
Natural urgency.
Yes.
Natural urgency. Ryan, a question that's interesting to ponder. Obviously, based on what Alex just said about local law 97, there are a lot of ways to mitigate energy usage in buildings. We all know this, and there's no shortage of companies out there offering ways to do so in the face of 97. So you've got this natural urgency. You know that there is a deadline approaching. How did you and the team evaluate the cost benefit opportunity, let's say for logical buildings and parity in the greater context of everything else that was out there in the universe?
Yeah, I mean, so I think part of it, the financial cost benefit, I think is relatively straightforward. Luckily, you guys are great partners to help us create the complex part of it, which is the energy savings,
Thank
the
you.
building assessment. And that's only a portion of it. We have to create the story internally with our internal stakeholders, talking about the co-benefits, whether it be, transparency into the building, emissions reduction, just some general emissions initiatives, or grid resiliency, being a good partner in the local environment. So, you guys help us with the technical complex part of it. We bring together other co-benefits of our internal company to create this larger story so that we can, sell it as a project. And, luckily the returns on the financial support the other co-benefits. And so all of them together, we got the buy-in because they all make sense together. And, your partnership allows us to lean on you for some of the complex parts that would, be too time consuming for us to do by ourselves.
Thank you for those words. Co-benefits is actually, I may start using that term. Thank you, Ryan.
I'll probably say it a lot today. There's definitely a lot of co-benefits to all these, to both the companies and just all the initiatives we do together.
Yeah, and I guess to build on that a bit more, co-benefits or collaboration, let's say, Alex, to dig into that a bit more. Obviously we're in an era where there's a lot of prop tech, real estate technology, whatever the terms are. There's a lot of companies out there that are focused on this space, particularly that touch energy in one way or another. So, I don't envy the position that you all are in sometimes, having to sift through all the different ways that you can approach this problem, the different options you have out there in the marketplace. But that knowing that different companies have different strengths, different weaknesses, different ways they can add value. How important is it for you all in the way you look at things at AvalonBay for there to be this type of collaboration or the ability for different technology vendors, different partners that you work with to collaborate and work together to deliver the best result?
Yeah, I mean, having good partners is everything, right? And for us, beyond the energy savings and the bottom line, really, the satisfaction of our associates, our maintenance managers, our people on site, we want their life to be as easy as possible, and right. And then we find that when they're happy, they deliver great results, right? And so if we have vendors who aren't good partners, who are making our lives very difficult, it really gets in the way of that. And so you both are very service forward and deliver results. And so it's been a great partnership so far, and been great collaborating with you all. It's kind of a no-brainer for me. You guys offer great service. You come in, you deliver guaranteed energy savings. The other options out there on the market, really, if you're IoT and thermostat people who really are low capital but high service costs, they don't deliver a ton of value, not a lot of great service. You know, they're just kind of tweaking thermostats in the background. You have your building automation system companies who are very capital intensive, high service costs, and very poor service. You know, getting them to maintain the system has been very difficult. And then 3, you have your people who want to come in and monitor and meter everything, and provide you insights, and they want you to do all the work, right? And that's not a great partnership either. So I think the way we all work together, it provides a great balance, and we're very happy. Our on-site associates are very happy, and it creates happy residents as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for digging into that a bit, because I think it gets into, Ryan, what's a question to kick over to you, but just talking about how you get the larger team on board, right? We talked a bit about the on-site team there, but when it comes to getting the asset management team on board, the executive team on board for these types of initiatives, talk a bit about how you do that.
Yeah, kind of touching on what Alex said, the continued support is a very important part of this, so that if we implement a project, it doesn't stall out or some of the savings don't disappear. Having the continued support from both parties for continual training, continual measurement and verification, continual improvements to the systems is a very big part of selling this, so that we're providing more resources for our maintenance managers, our communities, to continually improve instead of just burdening them with more tasks and more initiatives and more goals that you need to meet. Giving them the extra resources, giving them the additional tools so we can all work together to meet our goals and expectations. I think financially, again, we can, based off of previous pilots, based off of rolling out a couple of these projects, a couple of these buildings, we've shown the payback and the emission savings and energy savings and utility cost savings. So now we can continue to work on that framework and expand into other regions and work with both of you to only improve the expectation and only improve the payback and returns on the projects. Instead of just flatlining our energy savings, we can increase it because of the continued support and continued iteration. And so that was a big selling feature internally. This is not just a one-time set and forget. It's continuous improvement.
Yeah, no, and it's I think helpful to hear that, because I think just having been in this industry for well over a decade at this point, I think that's been one of the big evolutions that we've started to see, this approach towards continuous optimization, continuous improvement, and not as much of a, just call it exclusive focus on more kind of project-based transactional approach to energy management, which I think is a big part of what we're all talking about here today. Good. So Alex, to bring it back to the on-site folks, talk us a bit about what did the folks on site, the maintenance managers, the people running these buildings, what was it like to get them on board once these systems went live? Talk us through that process a bit.
Yeah, so there definitely is a startup process, an introduction process, and a change in mindset, right? And so we had to manage it very carefully. We had a lot of obstacles in the beginning, right? Bringing on a new vendor. There are new ways we need to communicate and think about things. And so we kind of had to change the mindset to, typically when something goes wrong in our building, the first call is to our trusted vendor, right? Our trusted mechanical company, our trusted plumber. But we really had to train our staff to think about, hey, is Parity touching the system? Are they doing something with it right now? Reach out to Parity service. Okay, they're not doing anything. And so there's a process we need to follow to make sure everything goes smoothly. But once people were on board with that and we got through that kind of introduction phase, everything's been great. And so, we're maintaining thermal comfort. Our utilities department is saying great things to our managers. And so now that we have the whole team on board, it's really kind of just fully automating now. And we're really reaping the benefits.
Yeah, and I know it's sort of a meet the building where it's at, meet the different personalities sometimes where they're at, in terms of how far along the curve they are in adapting technology and working with some of these types of solutions, which I know is a ongoing process that we really need to have the support the folks on the real estate side, as well as, a lot of human support that comes with this in addition to the technology. I think that's really a key part of what makes this work.
The human support is crucial for from our engineering team to our maintenance associates.
Yep.
From you, from Logical Buildings. I mean, that's really key. Ironing out those processes, the triage, the escalation. Once you put it together, though, it runs brilliantly.
Yeah, so maybe to dive into a specific example of how this, talked a bit about the dollars and cents, but just impacts some of the folks, in these buildings. So, last summer, we had a situation where there are 3 back-to-back days of demand response events. A heat wave going through the city. It can be difficult for buildings to take action in the more sort of traditional way you might approach that. So, talk us through that. How was that executed? What did that end up looking like?
Yeah, so I have to say it was actually pretty easy. So with Parity in our buildings, we were really able to automate all kinds of shutdowns, setbacks, pre-cooling, fan speed reductions. So you made our life pretty easy there. All we really had to handle was resident communication, letting our residents know, like, hey, during this event, these things are going to happen. This is us being a good owner, being a good neighbor for the community, for the grid here. Residents are fully on board as long as they're given notice. Years ago, before we had, a full plan or Parity in the building, or, our control systems, it was a very manual process. And so if we had to go around the building, shutting down systems, pre-cooling an hour in advance, it really sucked a lot of resources. And especially during those periods when temperatures are really hot and you got work orders coming in, residents' P-tax or HVAC systems going down, it can really hurt the community and its reputation. And so with this automation, I have to say it was actually pretty easy. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, I know, as building staffs are asked to do more. I think this sort of integrated approach is something I also just want to commend the folks at Logical Buildings on too. There's 3 legs to this stool in order to make demand response work. So it's automation with the systems on site, automation with the demand response provider. And I think that's really a winning solution from what we've seen in these types of buildings where you oftentimes might have more limited on-site resources to make these adjustments, right? I think, we're talking about apartment buildings, not necessarily Class A office buildings where you might have a bigger staff that has the capacity to make more manual adjustments or sort of jump on things as they come up. So I think, all of us on this call are really focused on how does this apply and how do we solve this problem, within these larger apartment buildings.
I hope you don't mind, James, if I jump in quickly. Alex, the fact that you said this is easy, this is the vision that everyone on this call, want to paint for the buildings out there beyond New York City, in America. This is how it should be. We care about these assets. We care about preserving their longevity. It should be like this. So it makes me happy to hear that you guys really have mastered this process and you found a way to build it into your routine. And there's no reason this Midtown community. And I hope that we can all continue to be advocates for this cause and make sure it is easy. So I'm glad you used that word particularly.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it's easy too, you can add on challenges, right? So what we're doing today is really just the foundation. I think the real returns are coming in the future, to be honest, as energy costs increase, electrification. We're really setting the foundation for major revenue and savings down the line. So now that we have this in an easy spot, we're gonna challenge you to the next step, get us to the next place.
Love that. Sorry, James. Thanks for that letting me do that interruption.
No. Please chime in. And it's good to segue back to you, Ryan, to talk a bit about outcomes, right? So when you think about the impacts, whether it's savings, revenue, resident comfort, how do you look at that? What's most important to you from your perspective?
Yeah, I think a couple points here. I think as people saw the numbers above, those numbers far exceeded our expectations. So we're meeting what we expected and way more. So financially, it makes sense, and that's just going to create the basis for future projects and our expansion that we're already doing. I think a major part of this is data, which, on the sustainability side, getting accurate data and measurement verification is extremely important and a challenge in multifamily that we have. And so setting up accurate data in Parity and Logical Buildings to support the, proof of energy savings and proof of the projects, I think is one of the most important parts of this, for the continued success. And I do want to touch on, like, I know when we were, I was looking at the last year's data, I was seeing for one of the buildings, like, it really ramped up over the year, the savings. And I was, asking Parity, why did that happen? And, it goes to show that they incrementally implemented the system. And over the year, they worked with the building to create more energy savings, but they didn't hit the building with a huge change immediately. And it just shows you the process that goes through. And we saw it on the back end with the energy savings to incrementally improve the performance, and you'll get more and more energy savings as it continues in its process. I think that's very important, just to show the cooperation that happens between the building and the service. And similarly, like on demand response, you can do huge shutoffs and huge cuts, but it's going to impact your thermal comfort and your occupant comfort. And by having the cooperation between the two companies, you're able to make small adjustments and get feedback from the building, so that you can maybe change your impact the day after if it was too big of a cut on the demand response activation. And that's important, to just continue to grow to other buildings, and keep the occupant comfort and meet the demand response activation. We're going to see more and more events coming up in the future. It's not going to probably get less. We're going to see more.
Yes,
So,
we are.
we could set these up all individually right now and call it a success, but we really should be looking towards the future of how are we going to meet the demand of more activations, and how are we going to meet the demand of more activity. So the synergies are, really going to make that easy, as you said before. So that's the big win for me, looking towards the future.
And how are you thinking about these types of initiatives within the context of your larger sustainability program, other sustainability or energy related investments that you're making? Just, talk us through your thinking and sort of where this sort of type of thing, sits in terms of a priority level. It'd be helpful to get a sense for that.
Yeah. The controls and demand response are, great energy efficiency projects, that far, they exceed the threshold that we have for returns. So they're high on the list, high priority list, improve the operation of the systems we already have. That's very important to us. Relatively low implementation friction. There's obviously some with operation and control, but we already should have a lot of the systems in place. So it's about changing how we interact and how we control them. So they're very high on our list. What was I going to say about the co-benefits? That was the other part. The co-benefits of supporting grid resiliency, and also the energy reduction and cost savings along with demand response revenue. The co-benefits of those two things, they bring the projects to the top of the list because there are more and more benefits. Just make it even more important.
Ryan, a question. Now we've reached this end state where the numbers look great, and you've built this repeatable process. But change is hard, and sometimes we're all human. It can be kind of scary to take the first step. So, what advice would you give to other multifamily operators out there who want to do something like this, but might have initial apprehension that it's a little too complex or maybe not worth the ROI?
Yeah. So I would say, on kind of what I touched on before, leaning for at least the first initial pilots to, step in a little bit to test a building out, leaning on Parity and Logical Buildings to help with some of the complex part of the energy analysis and building assessment, and then making sure you're set up for the data verification. Now, Logical Buildings and Parity kind of do this for you already, but apply this to other projects. Having the data and measurement and verification portions built into the project I think is key, and the part that we're trying to improve on with every project. Luckily, it comes kind of as a given with these types of projects, but I think that's extremely important. Making sure you have the systems and data verification set up so that you can track it on a year-to-year basis
From the outset,
from the outset, because the aggregate data we get from the utilities or metering data can vary. The quality can vary. It can kind of go all over the place. So taking the infrastructure to measure and verify into your own hands is important from the outset.
Right. I want to thank you for that, Ryan. I want to go back to fellow Alex for a moment, and then Ryan, I'll ask you the same question. But looks like we were getting a little peek into the Alex Heckman crystal ball of energy in the future with, I think your words were major revenue. So I'm curious if we can peel back the curtain a little bit. We've got grid interactivity increasing. We've got electrification everywhere. We've got the most talked about abbreviation on the planet, AI. How do you see this world, our world, evolving? Alex, sorry, mute.
Sorry, there we go. I think on the demand response side, I definitely see the gas demand response program definitely increasing. And so I definitely see partial electrification as a good investment right now for the future. And then I think, I don't know about AI, but I think partnerships, tools that Logical Buildings and Parity have are really going to kind of revolutionize the game here, because I see energy costs inflating much faster than everything else. And so the true value in how, where your community stands in your portfolio, top to bottom, is really going to matter on how they perform from a utility standpoint, right? How they conserve water, how they conserve energy. Do they peak shave? Do they do demand response programs? That's really going to take you from the bottom to the top, right? As these energy costs grow. And so I see it being a much larger conversation in the future. I see asset managers bringing up energy more, investments, acquisitions. I think everybody's going to have to become a small expert in energy in the future. And so I think this, as the years go by, this is going to play a larger and larger role, especially with, building performance standards and fines coming across the country. That's only going to multiply, right? And so what we do here now in New York and also too in Boston too with Birdo is really going to be the playbook for everybody else across the country.
Ryan, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping AI can help us with the data crunching, creating that feedback loop to be even better for smart building controls. If we can get better data and the cost to get the data comes down, and then if AI can help us analyze it and bring feedback loops back to smart building controls better, that would be a win. But some, those are a little bit siloed right now, depending on the setup of the building. Just in multifamily, we have a lot of different property types and setups. So that's my hope, is that we can, hopefully AI can connect some of those dots for us.
I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
I think it's only a matter of time. So I think that actually concludes our questions for you, I should say, James, and my question. And we're actually going to turn on over to the audience. So I'm happy to read out the questions as they come in. And everyone who's listening, now's your time to shine. If you haven't put forward a question, please feel free to do so. First one for Alex and Ryan. Are you able to realize the demand response income as a REIT? I don't know if, well, I'll let you guys take it and share as you wish.
I wish I could defer to my accounting department, but yes, as a REIT, most of our income has to be rent related, right? And so this falls under the category of kind of bad revenue, and so there's limits to what we can do, but we ensure there's plenty of room for solar recs and demand response income, and a lot of our sustainability initiatives.
Excellent. Next question. Has AvalonBay considered community solar in hedging against the future expected cost of energy?
Yes, I mean, so we actually have a pretty robust what we call resident solar program, where we have large installations on our communities, and the residents can enroll in the solar program and see the benefits of reduced energy costs from the solar that's generated on site. And we have that largely in California and Colorado through virtual net metering with the utilities. So that's kind of one of the barriers to that. With community solar, there's one of the new programs we have with Public Grid, which is rolling out access to supply and some community solar. So we're definitely exploring that through different programs with the utilities and software platforms like Public Grid.
Excellent. Next up, for commercial and Class A buildings, looks like this is a multi-layered question. What are the processes for understanding basic building systems operations and gathering historical consumption data to develop a baseline against which savings are compared? So in short, how does AVB think about building a baseline?
Do you want to go, Alex? And then
Yeah, so I guess for in new development, right, we're always looking at our comps to establish our budgets, right? We're looking at similar buildings, right? And that's the baseline there, right? But for existing communities, it is historical information. We have a great utility department and sustainability department, which Ryan is part of, with a lot of Power BI dashboards that we monitor very closely, right? And we also relate to performance, right? Of ourselves, Ryan and myself and our associates. Coming up with kind of like a true baseline, I definitely recommend, here in New York City, we have local law 87, the retro commissioning. Doing an energy audit, getting someone in your building, an expert in the field, definitely helps. Getting your equipment list set, having your work order system, your rounds established. Those are all important for setting the baseline and setting your maintenance culture, really, right? This is just a small piece of our maintenance culture. Those are things I definitely recommend doing.
Yeah, I mean, in the ideal world, we would have metering that covers the full consumption of the building. That's not the reality in multifamily. So we rely on the utilities to provide us whole building energy data rather than having access to the meter data ourselves. So for example, using resources and services that can get you that whole building aggregate data, and we use Energy Star Portfolio Manager as helping to create baselines and benchmark our buildings, as many jurisdictions do. So I think that's a great first step. Energy Star Portfolio Manager is a good resource, and it's free.
Yeah, and then to even get more granular from the metering information itself, companies like Parity who come in, they're not only providing energy savings, but they're also monitoring the performance, setting the baseline, right? They're reading the KW that's coming off that VFD. And so these services help to get more granular information as well.
And I think Logical Buildings has a great metering platform that, they can help you out with that too.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
That we use for demand response in many of our buildings. So metering data is great on Logical Buildings.
Yeah, and I would just add too, I mean, I think, in order to do the type of, stuff we're talking about on this webinar, you need to get into the buildings too, in order to set, an equipment level baseline. You need to understand how this equipment is running in its, as of today form, in order to be able to track, monitor, and report on progress. And that's really, when you're having success, when you can report on that, everyone feels good about that. That's what helps you build momentum. So, we're definitely in an age where, people are really focused on what you can do digitally, what you can do in the cloud, but you still got to get into buildings. You got to integrate with this stuff. You got to figure out how it's working, what needs to be fixed. That's a really important part of making the software and all of the, the real tech forward stuff work on the back end.
Agreed, James. Agreed. Next question. I was waiting for a tariff question to come up. With tariffs in our future, what effect would you say will be felt? I'll take a first stab, actually, if that's okay with the group, which is that, James, as you just mentioned, when you have these technological solutions and you have the natural urgency of local laws like Birdo and 97, there are still compelling reasons to have these resources available And there's a disconnect in a way between what's happening at the federal level and at local levels, meaning New York City, actually the highest court in New York just ruled that Local Law 97 is here to stay. So this policy and the policies it is inspiring across the country are not changing. And I can say that from a logical buildings perspective, we haven't seen any sort of slowdown related to the tariff, probably quite the opposite, because people now more than ever are looking for these cost-effective ways to reduce their fines. And they want the opportunity to, when I say fines, by the way, I mean Local Law 97 fines. And they want the opportunity to generate revenue on top of it. And it doesn't involve robust hardware implementation. There's for logical buildings work, there's nothing. So I think that we are actually in a great opportunity, because when buildings are looking for these relatively, easy to implement tech-focused solutions, there's no better time than to take this opportunity. And now I'll pass to the rest of the group.
I don't think I have anything specifically. I mean, I'm just hoping tech product prices don't go up. That's it. As long as the prices stay low, I'm happy. They've come
Yeah.
down a lot in the recent years, and like that's a huge benefit to multifamily. Trying to get some of these devices in multifamily properties. So
Yeah. Well,
hopefully that remains.
maybe for Alex and Ryan, maybe reframe the question a bit, because I think it is a very good one and timely one. I mean, does it impact the way you're thinking about, energy efficiency and electrification? Is it making you, want to fast track maybe the bigger CapEx projects related to that, or table them for a little bit longer? If the expectation is that the cost for those types of projects, which sometimes can have challenging economics, to begin with, does it change the way you're thinking about those and put even more emphasis on the type of, work that we're talking about today, which is really get the most performance out of what you already have in the building type of stuff?
I think maybe one of the side effects is that it will uh, allow projects like energy efficiency and controls to rise to the top, because the other projects may become more difficult to pencil. But I wouldn't say we're taking an approach right now to push one or the other because of the tariffs. I think we're still just continuing our normal process and kind of seeing where it all lands.
I agree with you, Ryan. Related to the idea of projects penciling, and this is a more specific question financially, has the potential loss of the ITC affected any of the enhancements or improvements that AvalonBay Communities has planned for energy technology or other projects in the works?
I mean, as of right now, no, just because it's up in the air. Yeah, not really, not going to change anything until it happens. But I could definitely see it affecting solar. But until it's real, I'm gonna hope that it stays.
Yeah, and again, going back to kind of like the REIT question, our tax benefits are limited. But I think the big thing is, Ryan's team and Katie, our head of sustainability, we have science-based targets that we have to meet, right?
Yeah.
This is what we tell shareholders. So regardless of what benefits or incentives, tax credits may exist, we're gonna do what we have to do, what we feel is right to do.
All right, I think we've got time for one more question about Local Law 97. Obviously, you guys are getting to the end of the filing, or I'm sure you're approaching the point at which you'll be submitting your filing. How is AvalonBay thinking about what happens after June 30th? And how do you plan to prepare for Local Law 97 filings next year based on what you've learned going through the process this year?
Definitely gonna let Alex take this one.
Yeah. So I mean, Local Law 97 is very complex for us. For this year, we have all of our rent-controlled qualifying communities going through the prescriptive measure through that. I think it's Article 321, and so those are all set. They're all ready to go. And then we have some market rate buildings which are in a good position right now through 2030, and so that'll be really just an annual filing process, which I think will be pretty easy. But we have a lot of our communities which are rent controlled currently destabilize, right? And so it really changes things come that destabilization in
Yeah.
the future. And so it's going to get very complex for us. So given that most of our communities will be below that 35% affordable that the law calls out, we're putting together full decarb plans for all of our New York City assets. And that's the plan we're going to stick to.
Yeah, long-term capital planning is starting.
And that plan really will be guided by the limits and the thresholds and the fines that come, with every new cycle of Local Law 97. And so we're going to stay right under that threshold and maximize ROI as much as possible.
Yes, that destabilization, I can imagine that throwing a little bit of a curveball into to operations.
Yeah, you think you're exempt and then you're not, and it gets a little crazy.
Well, I think it's you guys are tackling the problem head on. Unfortunately, there are probably some buildings that have not yet addressed it, so I give you kudos for doing so. Well, really, this has been it's an amazing conversation, and can we just go to the next slide, please? Let's wrap things up. Thank you. So we've reached the end of our energy journey, and I don't know if AvalonBay Communities would say they're living happily ever after, but it certainly seems like it. Here's a recap of what we've learned and really what matters most. So first, it all starts with energy visibility. We spoke about data and how really to make a tangible change, whether the focus is cutting the costs or lowering local law 97 fines, buildings need to acknowledge their current state in order to get to that future state. Next, really to make changes, buildings should be working smarter, not harder. Alex used a great term, which I love, maintenance culture. And that works in concert with automation and technology like what Parity provides. And this is the way of the future. If buildings are not necessarily investing in these two measures of automation and also strong maintenance culture, they might get left behind. Of course, you want to treat your systems well. No one wants their HVAC conking out in the middle of July. So monitoring data, managing systems, team training keeps equipment healthy so that your building doesn't have to go through hiccups in those pressing times. And then finally, when you've got this all in place, your property deserves to earn revenue. There's no reason why you shouldn't participate in this program. And even if you're just beginning the journey of exploring technologies, it doesn't mean you can't participate. This is an opportunity for every building and every resident in places like New York City to get involved. And if you have a capable team, and if you have the will to get it done, and if you have technology like Parity as well in logical buildings, there's no reason you shouldn't succeed in creating annual revenue and creating savings, just like we've seen today from AvalonBay Communities. And with that, I'd just like to formally close. I want to thank Alex Heckman, Ryan Younis for a really fantastic conversation, spanning the gamut of energy. Thank you to my co-host, James Hanna from Parity. Our contact information is on the screen. And I want to thank all of our attendees for a great session. Hopefully it was the hottest energy conversation of the summer. Maybe we'll do a part 2. Who knows? We'll have to talk to Alex and Ryan about that. But I just want to thank the group again. And we wish all of you a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you all.